Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football late Sunday night. Just some more massive news for Brian Kelly, the LSU Tigers, coming out of the transfer portal as former safety AJ Haulcy from Houston officially committing to LSU. Now, AJ Haulcy, the football player, very easy sell to the LSU fans. Like, this is a multi-dimensional safety that can be a ball hawk when you need him to be, that can come up in the box and support the run, that can hold up in man coverage. I mean, you look at what he did in 2024, he had 15 run stops. Like, that's more than some linebackers get all year from the safety position. Very good at coming into the box and supporting the run. You look at 5 interceptions, eight pass breakups, like ball hawking safety that gets his hands on the football in the back end. Also very solid in man coverage. This is a safety that you can ask to do pretty much anything you want to ask him to do in the 2025 year, which is a stark difference from what LSU had in 2024, where, guys like Jordan Gilbert, they were solid for LSU, but I would probably make the argument that the safety position was the worst position on the football field for LSU on defense in 2024. You look at this unit going into 2025, you add to Marcus Cooley, you add AJ Haulcy, two blue chip safety prospects from the transfer portal. You have Deshaun Spears going into year 2. This could be a position group that is a strength for LSU in the 2025 year. That's probably where I want to start this conversation, is we're going to talk about AJ Haulcy and what he brings to LSU. Very, very good football player. Look at this LSU defense as a whole and say, what are the expectations for this unit in 2025? I think for a lot of LSU fans going into spring practice, it's just, hey, we want to see consistent, steady improvement. We saw this LSU defense get better under Coach Baker in 2024, even though he probably didn't have the talent to be a great defense. Going into 2025, it's not only year 2 for Coach Baker. You are injecting 8 4-star recruits that are coming through in the portal. I mean, when you have that 4 stars next to your name as the transfer portal prospect, that means 24/7 Sports is telling us they think those are NFL caliber guys. You kind of look at that from a bird's eye view approach. LSU is adding 8 NFL caliber dudes immediately into this defense through the transfer portal. Not to mention, you have a guy like DJ Pickett coming in who is sure as hell going to be playing in the NFL over the next couple of years. The talent on the defensive side of the football is night and day different for this unit going into 2025. And then you combine that with Coach Baker going into year 2. We got to start talking about this LSU defense in a little bit of a different lens, you might say. We just wanted to see them continue to get better. I think I'm getting to the point where I'm looking at it and saying that this unit, from what I see on paper and from what I know about Coach Baker and this coaching staff, this should be one of the best units in the SEC, if not the country, in the 2025 year. That's what excites me the most. Now, I want to start with AJ Haulcy, look at this defense from kind of a bird's eye view approach and talk about what it looks like. Before we get into it, as always, the LSU fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. I would love to hear the expectations for the LSU fans in terms of what we think this defense should be in 2025, because I look at it and say the expectations should be pretty dang high. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. It's been a blast talking this football team pretty much the whole entire offseason, as they have probably been the biggest winner of any team in the country in the offseason. Cannot thank the LSU fans enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, can I just give a shout out to Brian Kelly in the front office? This was probably what you would say is a tricky transfer portal recruitment, where it came down to Miami and LSU. AJ Haulcy was, asking for a lot of money, and rightfully so, is one of the best players that we saw in the spring portal. Brian Kelly did not get super desperate to land AJ Haulcy. He was consistent. He made a fair offer. He kind of laid in the weeds. Like, Miami had the buzz for like the last week until going into the weekend. This is how you got to operate in the portal, where, hey, we're going to be aggressive for the players that we want, but we're not going to be over aggressive. We're going to stick to our process. Brian Kelly did that, and in the end landed AJ Haulcy, who I think clearly wanted to play in the SEC. I would say the same thing for Bernard Gooden that we talked about last weekend. Bernard Gooden, he at the portal, LSU identifies him as, hey, that's a position of need and the best player available at that position. Quickly get him on campus, wrap up the commitment. Don't let him take visits to any other programs. Like what LSU is doing in the portal, this is master class stuff when it comes to roster building. Now, getting into AJ Haulcy, I mean, he's a guy that's played over 2,100 snaps, routinely grades out very, very well. 259 tackles, 7 interceptions, 15 pass breakups. Again, at the safety position in 2024 for LSU, they were limited in terms of what they could ask guys like Jordan Gilbert and company to do. Now with Tamarcus Cooley and AJ Haulcy, the whole playbook's open. Like whatever Coach Baker wants to ask these safeties to do, these guys can do it in 2025. How does AJ Haulcy specifically impact this LSU defense in the 2025 year? Well, I would argue that some of the things that LSU struggled with the most in the 2024 season, AJ Haulcy has a direct impact on. LSU struggled to force turnovers. They only forced 1.1 turnovers per game in the 2024 season. That was 105th in the country. You go out and add a safety that is about as good as it gets in terms of being a ball hawk and getting his hands on footballs and creating turnovers. You talk about, and we said this, I believe, on Friday afternoon. You talk about the difference between a 8 and 9 win team and a 10 and 11 win team. Forcing turnovers in big moments is certainly one of those conversations. Like AJ Haulcy can do that for your football team in the 2025 year. What about stopping the run? LSU, 4.3 yards per carry given up. That was 65th in the country. We want to improve that number. AJ Haulcy as a safety is more than capable. I would make the argument that he's one of the better safeties in the country at coming into the box and stopping the run. Like that, he's certainly providing value there. And then explosive plays in the passing attack, giving up 7.8 yards per pass attempt last year. That was 98th. That's directly correlated in terms of how good your safeties are. Well, AJ Haulcy is going to help that number as well. All the things that LSU at times struggled with on the defensive side of the football in the 2024 year, I think AJ Haulcy immediately comes in and makes it a little bit better. And look at the names that we have highlighted in red. I mean, you can go down the list. Patrick Payton, he's going to be selected in the NFL draft if he plays to the way we know he can play. Bernard Gooden, y'all know how I feel about him. I couldn't believe that there were some people, even some LSU fans, were talking about Bernard Gooden like he's Javier Suggs, going to be a solid rotational guy. I think he's much better. Like go watch him against Alabama. This is not a depth piece rotational player that LSU added in the middle of that defensive line. I think he can be a game wrecker. Jack Pyburn is arguably the player that has generated the most buzz coming out of spring practice. Then you look in the back end, Mansour Delane. He's a known commodity. Like we know he's an NFL caliber dude, all conference guy. Jakeem Jackson. Look, it sounds like LSU hit on him in the portal. He's a guy that we don't necessarily know a ton about. We know a lot more about Mansour Delane as a football player than Jakeem Jackson. But from what we heard coming out of spring, like Jakeem Jackson is the top 50 national prospect that we thought he was going into year 3 of his college football career at LSU. AJ Haulcy, Tamarcus Cooley, like two safeties that have played a ton of football at an extremely high level. All the names highlighted in red are guys that are going to have significant impacts on this defense in 2025. Not to mention, you get Harold Perkins coming back from injury. You get Whit Weeks coming back, who I think is one of the best off-ball linebackers in the country. You have some guys, Ashton Stamps or Deshaun Spears or PJ Woodland, that we like, that are kind of in that developmental pipeline. This defense, from a talent standpoint, blows what we saw in 2024 out of the water. And so you start looking at, all right, expectations for this LSU defense. It's year 2 for defensive coordinators, you get an inherent bump. Look at any year 2 defensive coordinator that you see in the country. You're normally going to see a better defense in year 2 than you saw in year 1. So just alone, before we even added the talent into this defense, we kind of assumed this unit was going to be a little bit better. And now you're telling me we're adding 8 to 9 potential, not potentially, these guys have played like they're going to probably be NFL draft picks in the future, as well as returning some really good football players, as well as getting Harold Perkins back from injury. That this defense is night and day more talented than what we're going to see, what we saw in 2024. If you get that, like you get an elite defense with Garrett Nussmeier, who you're seeing some people talk about as being the number one overall draft pick in 2026, with difference makers on the outside, with an offensive line that, yes, needs to replace a lot of talent, but also like kind of got some good returns coming out of spring practice and has been developed in a very good way. What LSU's done in the transfer portal, and this is really all you can ask for from a coaching staff and a front office, what LSU has done in the portal has put them in a position with the talent that they have on the roster to compete for a national championship. I don't think there's a question about that. Now, I'm not necessarily saying they're going to be my pick to win a national championship, but from what I'm seeing on paper, it's not out of the possibility for this LSU team. In fact, I don't even know if I'd be that surprised if we're talking about LSU as a national championship threat in the end of October, because that's what I'm seeing on paper for LSU. We'll close it out there. Massive news. LSU caps off what is, I don't know, like a legendary offseason run for the LSU Tigers. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.